Hello, nerds for Yang. This week's episode is about Bernie Sanders compared to Andrew Yang. So I figured there's probably a lot of people out there who are former Bernie supporters who are now thinking, hey, should I go with Bernie again since he's running again? Or should I think about this Yang guy? And then there's probably some Yang supporters who are like, hey, I liked Bernie back in the day. What's the difference between the two? So this episode is all about that. So first things first, as of March 17th, 2019, if you go to the Bernie Sanders official campaign website, there are no policy positions. I was trying to do some research for this video, and you go to his site, and the first thing it does is it asks for your email address and your zip code. There's no other option. So I was like, okay, yeah, maybe it needs that because it's trying to collect its email address for newsletters and, yada yada. I give it, and then it's like, oh, do you want to donate? I'm like, no, man, I just want to see what the policy positions are. And that's it. So as of this recording, all you can do on Bernie's site is give your name, email address, zip code, and money, which I understand why you'd want to collect. But it seems like if you've already announced your campaign, you should have some policy positions. Now, luckily, Bernie ran last year. So this summary is going to be based on what I could find from Bernie's record, mainly from Wikipedia, and I think that's mainly sourced from his voting record in the Senate and what he sort of ran on in 2016. Okay, with that said, let's start the comparison. So life experience. Bernie's got a lot more, 70 plus years of life experience. So that's definitely an advantage in a lot of ways. Whereas Yang is 44, so he's no kid, but he doesn't have, 7 decades of experience on the planet. I would argue that I think the country is ready for fresh ideas, and as smart and committed as Bernie is, he does come from a very different generation and different sort of worldview. I don't want to harp on the website not being available, but that's just weird. So that's life experience. You've got Bernie's been in the Senate. He's been in the Senate since 2006, so about 13 years. And before that, he was in the House. So that's 16 years plus 13. That sounds like 29 years in the federal government. Whereas Yang, mainly an entrepreneur, briefly corporate attorney, started a couple companies, was the CEO of one that got acquired, which is how he became, pretty wealthy. So, Yang's, I guess, more of a private sector guy. And that would kind of describe their work experience. Yang's someone who has run payroll, who's had to raise money, who's had to do deals. And Bernie's someone who obviously knows Washington inside and out. So those are pros and cons for both. Education. So Yang has pretty much as blue chip an education background as you can get. He went to a very fancy boarding school in New Hampshire, Phillips Exeter. Then he went to Brown University in Rhode Island. And then he got his law degree from Columbia. So, if that were your kid, you'd be pretty psyched. Bernie, on the other hand, has a great educational background as well. He has his bachelor's degree in poli-sci from University of Chicago. Also very strong educational background. I would probably give the nod to Andrew, but you know, they're both really smart and they've done really well in school. Now, style, Bernie's more of a yeller. He's intense. He's got the sense of outrage about him. I think a lot of people share that. Andrew's more of a, I think he's also pretty outraged himself, but he chooses to manifest that externally in a very, you know, kind of matter of fact, like, here's a problem, let's solve it kind of way. So I think that style thing would affect how well they might appeal to independents. You know, you could see some moderate Republicans saying, hey, I really don't like Trump, but that Bernie's just like, you know, always shouting and kind of a little frazzled. Whereas maybe this Yang guy, you know, he just seems like someone at work, like some director or VP at work that is just trying to solve problems. So different styles. In terms of support, I mean, Bernie is killing it in the polls. Let's see as of this taping where he's at. Yeah, so as of the last poll on March 12th by Morning Consult, it's not clear to me that Yang is even in there because they have a 0% support line and he's not even there. So obviously that affects the results. However, they definitely had Bernie and Biden on there. And Bernie is at 27, Biden's at 31, Harris is at 10, and then the rest are single digits or less. So from a support point of view, no question, Bernie's a brand name. Yang is far from it. Although I would say in terms of an energy point of view, Yang has gotten to 65,000 donors. Bernie has well more than that, but he kind of is drafting off of the momentum that he had from 2016. But as an example, 65,000 donors for Yang. Let's compare him to, I know this is all about Bernie versus Yang. Okay, so Yang's got 65,000, or past 65,000, I think last week. Pete Buttigieg, who was on CNN with the town hall, has now 76,000. So I would say from a support point of view, Bernie's definitely the big dog, but I wouldn't count Yang out. Obviously, I'm biased. I have a whole channel dedicated to Yang. But 65,000 individual donors for someone nobody's heard of, not too shabby. Now, let's look at specific policies for Bernie. On the economy, his big thing is income inequality and the disparity of wealth. So can't disagree with that. I think Yang would make very similar arguments. Maybe where the candidates differ is on how they want to approach it. I think Bernie has talked mostly about raising the minimum wage and increasing taxes on the rich through higher income taxes. With Yang, I think he takes a little bit more of a fresher approach. He goes obviously for the universal basic income, which is $1,000 a month for every citizen. No questions asked. Whether you're working or not, everybody gets $1,000. The second thing would be the value-added tax, which is kind of like a national sales tax. And in a way, when you combine it with the UBI, with the universal basic income, it is a net gain for lower income people. But people with more income will pay that national sales tax, and they're probably going to pay out more than the $1,000 a month they get back from the UBI. So I would argue that VAT tax, the national sales tax or value-added tax, is a way to tax the wealthier people. Let's say people making more than $100,000 a household. But it's not as, it's kind of applied more evenly than just saying, oh, we're going to raise taxes on, the millionaires and billionaires. The other thing that Yang is doing is promoting more focus on trade schools, community colleges versus everybody going to college. Whereas I think Bernie's for free college for everybody. So depending on where you land on that, that's a pretty big difference. I personally agree with Yang that there are probably too many people, starting college and then not finishing it. I think the national rate of completion of a 4-year college degree is now about 50%. So 50% of people who start college don't finish. And then of those who do finish, I think I've seen statistics like almost half are doing jobs that don't require that college degree. So you wonder, like, wow, they just spent 4 years and all this money to go to college to do a job that didn't require it. If they had taken that same money and time to develop a different set of skills, maybe those people would have been better off. At least it should have been a choice for them. But, that's kind of a big difference where Bernie wants everybody to go to college, and I think Yang wants lots of people to go to college, but then also lots of people to go to community college and lots of people to go to trade school and learn professions that, will be highly valued even in a highly automated kind of economy. So things like, air condition repair people or plumbers or roofers. These are types of professions that I think in the U.S. we don't really focus on as much, and we all want our kids to become lawyers and doctors and that kind of job. But I think the reality is that A, we probably have a lot of lawyers in America. B, many of those people who go to law school end up not practicing law. C, a lot of low-level legal work might be automated by artificial intelligence in the future. Same for doctors, like radiologists used to be some of the most highly paid people, and now that's just being replaced by technology. Anyway, so that's a little bit about the economy. I would say they both want the same thing, but they want to go at it in different ways. I, biased, would go for Yang because I feel like he's got new ideas, new approaches, just fresher. Next, one thing I will give credit to Bernie about is he's been very clear about his position on trade. I think he was very much opposed to the TPP. He was probably opposed to NAFTA. Yang has not really, on his website, I don't see any policies about trade. As a kind of libertarian, former Republican, recent Democrat, I generally am in favor of fair trade and more trade and countries sort of collaborating and having kind of more efficient ways of producing goods and services. However, I would say for Yang, I don't know where he stands on it, but he should just be clear about what his position is. I'm hoping he hasn't published anything because he's got some brain trust that's coming up with some really kind of bright, refreshing ideas. If he doesn't, then he should just say, look, I'm for or against free trade, or I'm for it, but, under these conditions or whatever. So I'm going to have to give a point to Bernie on the trade thing. Healthcare. So you got to give credit to Bernie. He's been for single payer forever. So Medicare for all, whatever you want to call it, would be very much in Bernie's wheelhouse. With Yang, he's also for Medicare for all, although I will give him some credit. His approach has a little bit more nuanced thinking. So I think he's taking the position that we need Medicare for all, partly because the healthcare system is not a free market and there isn't fair competition. And so it's really not working for us as a country. And then obviously everybody will talk about how we spend twice as much on healthcare but get worse results than other countries. So I would say they both want Medicare for all. I kind of feel like Yang comes at it from more of like an independent kind of point of view. Like, I think he is a businessman who does believe in the power of markets. And I think in the case of healthcare, he's saying, you know what, this is an example where the markets aren't really producing the most efficient results, and here are the reasons why. You can check out a link to his site below for all of the nuance. He actually writes about it at great length in his book, The War on Normal People. Okay, last topic, the environment. So kudos to Bernie. He's rated #1 in the 113th Congress by the Climate Hawks Vote organization, which is this political action committee focused on combating climate change. With Yang, he's also big on the environment. I would say he doesn't really play it up as much. He says it in interviews. It's sort of tied, or his #2 issue after UBI and the economy. You know, one interesting thing he's talking about is an emissions tax. So like a lot of the Yang things, he actually wants the same thing that most Democratic candidates want, but I feel like he wants to go at it in at least a more specific way, and often a more kind of nuanced and interesting way. So, in summary, Bernie versus Yang, both kind of similar goals. I find Yang more put together in terms of his policies and proposals and his style. Bernie, way more passionate, way more well-known, way more experienced. Would I want them on the ticket together? Probably not, actually. I feel like Yang, you got to go with Yang because you want a fresh approach, and tying him to someone who's been in DC for like the last 30 years. So, yeah, I don't think I'd want them on the same ticket. I probably want like Yang and Buttigieg, or maybe Yang and Beto. I will say Beto, not exactly the smoothest rollout. He's been sort of under some pressure for some of the weirdness. I think some remarks he had about his wife, some jokes about her raising the kids. I didn't think it was that bad, but you know, like, you don't want your first week to be about all these kind of like things that you would imagine Biden would do, these gaffes. And then I think there was some weird stuff about his early writings. Now, I will say Beto's under a lot of scrutiny, and I'm sure if Yang were under similar national press scrutiny, he's going to say some stuff. So, at any rate, let's get back to Yang versus Bernie. I also think that in terms of the freshness, it's very rare to see a Democratic candidate who fits Yang's kind of, you know, unique background. Yeah, he's an Asian dude who likes math. Fine, that's funny. And The Daily Show has a great, you know, sort of satire about that. But he also cites like Milton Friedman and MLK and Tesla in the same paragraph. And that's just like, whoa. I don't think I would imagine most folks in DC even knowing who all three are. Maybe they'd get 2 out of the 3. Again, I could see Republicans and independents giving Yang a shot, and even Trump supporters. Whereas that would never happen for Bernie, probably not for Kamala Harris, probably not for Booker. Biden, maybe, but I don't know. I could see a lot of Trump supporters saying, oh, Biden, just like another, like a more likable version of Hillary. So at the end of the day, those are your 2 choices if you're thinking about Bernie versus Yang. Good news is we don't have to decide right away, but they're definitely very different. And so, you know, last thing, message to Team Bernie, like, dudes, get your website up, man. And to Team Yang, like, where's the policy on trade? We got to keep it real on this channel. So hopefully this was helpful. Feel free to put any questions or comments below. I can try and answer them. I can do some research for you. Kind of a political junkie, so it's a pleasure for me to find facts and present them in as normal a way as I can. All right, guys, keep it real and see you next week. Don't forget to subscribe to your Nerds for Yang. That's this channel that you're on. I know there's only a few videos, but I'll keep adding them.